My name is Jack Wyatt, and I've been farming this land for 15 years. What started as a simple wooden bridge across Miller's Creek to connect my north and south fields turned into a 2-year legal war that exposed corruption so deep it made national news. You see, my property sits right where the old Riverside Meadows subdivision decided they needed to expand their HOA's jurisdiction. They claimed my century-old farm somehow fell under their authority because of a surveying error from 1987. Their president, Anna Blair, made it her personal mission to turn my life into a living hell. The bridge I built with my own hands to access my cattle pasture? She called it an unauthorized structure and had it torn down while I was in town buying feed. But what Anna didn't know was that I had been documenting everything, and I mean everything, from the very beginning. Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from today. The trouble started in March 2022 when I received a certified letter from the Riverside Meadows HOA. I remember standing in my kitchen, coffee growing cold, reading the most ridiculous document I'd ever seen. According to Anna Blair's signature at the bottom, my 127-acre farm was somehow now subject to their architectural guidelines. Mr. Wyatt, the letter read, "It has come to our attention that your property contains several violations of our community standards, including, but not limited to, unpermitted livestock structures, non-conforming agricultural equipment storage, and an unauthorized bridge crossing Miller's Creek." I called my neighbor, Jim Patterson, whose family had lived next to me for 3 generations. "Jim, you ever hear of anything this crazy?" "Jack, they tried the same thing with the Henderson place 2 years back," Jim said. "Turns out Anna Blair's husband works for Mountain View Development. They've been buying up land around here, trying to expand that subdivision." The next morning, I drove over to the HOA office, a fancy building with marble counters and leather furniture that screamed money. Anna Blair sat behind a desk that probably cost more than my truck. Her blonde hair pulled back tight, wearing a smile that never reached her eyes. "Mr. Wyatt, so glad you could come in. I trust you received our letter?" "I did, and I'm here to tell you that you have no authority over my land. My property predates your subdivision by 40 years. Anna's smile faltered just slightly. "Well, there seems to be some confusion about property lines. According to our recent survey, conducted by Precision Land Surveying, your eastern boundary actually places you within our community jurisdiction." She slid a glossy folder across the desk. Inside were survey maps, legal documents, and photographs of my property taken from multiple angles. What struck me was how professional it all looked, and how wrong it all was. "Mrs. Blair, I've got the original deed from 1985 right here," I said, pulling out my father's paperwork. "Plus county records, tax assessments, and agricultural permits going back decades. My land was never part of your community." "Perhaps we should let the courts decide," Anna said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "In the meantime, we'll need you to comply with our architectural guidelines. That bridge of yours needs to come down. It's not in keeping with our community standards. That bridge connects my north and south pastures. Without it, I'd have to drive my cattle 5 miles around to reach the creek crossing." "Not our problem, Mr. Wyatt. Compliance is mandatory." I left that meeting knowing I was in for a fight. What I didn't know was just how dirty Anna Blair was willing to play. That afternoon, I called my lawyer, Sarah Martinez, who specialized in property disputes. "Jack, this sounds like a clear case of jurisdictional overreach," Sarah said, after reviewing the HOA's documents. "But these survey documents concern me. They look legitimate, but something feels off about the property descriptions." "What do you mean?" "The legal description references benchmarks that don't match county records. Either there's been a serious surveying error, or someone's playing games with the paperwork." That evening, I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint Miller's Creek gold. My grandfather had built the original crossing here in 1952. My father had reinforced it in 1978. I'd rebuilt it completely in 2019, after flash flooding washed out the old supports. 3 generations of Wyatts had maintained that bridge, and now Some HOA president who'd lived here less than 5 years wanted to tear it down. I made a decision that night. If Anna Blair wanted to play games, I'd play, but by my rules. I started with a simple step. I bought a security camera system and had it installed the next day. 8 cameras covering every angle of my property, all feeding to a cloud server with 24/7 monitoring. 2 weeks later, I received another letter. This time, Anna Blair was demanding I remove my non-conforming livestock structures. She was talking about my century-old barn and the cattle shelter I'd built in 2018. The letter gave me 30 days to comply or face legal action. That's when I knew this wasn't just about property boundaries or community standards. Anna Blair was trying to force me off my land entirely, but she'd picked the wrong farmer to mess with. The morning of April 15th, 2022, changed everything. I was in town picking up feed when my phone started buzzing with motion alerts from my security cameras. I pulled over at Murphy's gas station and opened the app, watching in disbelief as 3 men with chainsaws and heavy equipment began tearing down my bridge. By the time I raced home, it was over. 20 years of careful construction, reduced to a pile of splintered wood and twisted metal in the creek bed. A county sheriff's deputy was still on scene, filing paperwork. "Deputy Morrison, what the hell happened here?" "Sorry, Jack. HOA had a court order signed by Judge Harrison. Said the structure was unpermitted and posed a safety hazard to the community waterway." "Court order? I never received any notice about a hearing." "Says here you were served notice at your residence on April 1st. I knew for a fact I'd never received any such notice. While the deputy finished his report, I called Sarah Martinez from my truck. "Jack, slow down. They destroyed your bridge without notifying you?" "There's supposed to be a court order, but I was never served. This has to be illegal." "It is. Due process requires proper notification. We're filing for emergency relief immediately." But the damage was done. My cattle were stranded on the south side of Miller's Creek with no access to the main water source or shelter. I had to trailer them 5 miles to my neighbor's property just to keep them safe. That afternoon, I met with Jim Patterson and 3 other neighboring farmers at Murphy's Diner. The story that emerged painted a disturbing picture of Anna Blair's expanding influence. "She tried to get us to sign some kind of easement agreement last year," said Tom Rodriguez, whose family raised horses on the adjacent property. "Claimed it was just for utilities, but the fine print would have given the HOA access rights across our land." "Same here," added Maria Santos, who owned the organic vegetable farm to the north. "But when I refused, suddenly my property tax assessment doubled." Anna Blair's husband sits on the county assessment board. Old Pete Wilson, whose family had been farming here since the 1940s, just shook his head. "Boys, I've seen land grabs before, but nothing this sophisticated. They're using every legal trick in the book." That's when Jim dropped the bombshell. "Jack, you know Anna Blair's husband doesn't just work for Mountain View Development. He owns 40% of it. And guess who's been quietly buying up agricultural land around here?" Everything clicked into place. This wasn't about HOA violations or community standards. Anna Blair was orchestrating a systematic campaign to force out local farmers so Mountain View Development could build another subdivision. My bridge was just the first domino. I spent that evening in my barn office, surrounded by decades of property documents, studying every detail of Anna Blair's legal assault. The survey documents she'd shown me claimed my property boundary ran along an old fence line that hadn't existed since the 1960s. The court order for the bridge demolition had been signed by Judge Harrison, the same Judge Harrison whose campaign had received major donations from Mountain View Development. But as I dug deeper into the HOA's corporate filings, I found something interesting. Riverside Meadows HOA was registered as a non-profit community organization, which meant their financial records should be public. Yet, when I requested them through the county clerk's office, I was told they'd never been filed. Sarah Martinez confirmed my suspicions the next morning. "Jack, this HOA has been operating without proper nonprofit status for 3 years. They've been collecting fees, issuing fines, and taking legal action while technically operating as an illegal organization. What does that mean for their court order?" If they lack standing to bring suit, then every legal action they've taken is potentially void, but we need proof of financial misconduct to make it stick. That's when I remembered something Jim Patterson had mentioned. His wife worked as a bookkeeper for several local businesses, including the accounting firm that handled Mountain View Development's payroll. If money was changing hands improperly, she might have seen something. That evening, Jim called me with information that made my blood run cold. "Jack, Carol found something in the development company's expenses. There are monthly payments to something called Community Compliance Services, $10,000 a month for the past 2 years." "What's Community Compliance Services?" "Doesn't exist. It's a shell company registered to Anna Blair's home address." Anna Blair wasn't just abusing her HOA authority. She was embezzling community funds while using her position to benefit her husband's development company. But I needed more proof, and I was about to get it in the most unexpected way. The next morning, I received a call from Detective Sarah Chen with the County Financial Crimes Unit. "Mr. Wyatt, we understand you've been having difficulties with the Riverside Meadows HOA. We'd like to speak with you about your experiences." Detective Chen arrived at my farm on a Tuesday morning in May, accompanied by Agent Rodriguez from the State Attorney General's office. As we sat at my kitchen table, she explained why they'd contacted me. "Mr. Wyatt, you're not the first property owner to file complaints about Riverside Meadows HOA. We've received reports from 12 different residents over the past 18 months, reports of selective enforcement, excessive fines, and questionable financial practices." "What kind of questionable practices?" Agent Rodriguez opened a thick file. "Assessment fees that don't match community budgets, vendor contracts with companies that don't exist, legal expenses that far exceed normal HOA operations. Mrs. Blair has been very creative with community funds." I told them everything: the fraudulent survey, the improper court order, the destroyed bridge, and Jim's discovery about the shell company. Detective Chen took detailed notes while Agent Rodriguez examined my security footage on his laptop. "Mr. Wyatt, your cameras captured something very interesting during the bridge demolition," Agent Rodriguez said. "The demolition crew's truck has Blair Construction Services painted on the side. That's Anna Blair's brother-in-law's company." "So she used HOA funds to pay her family to destroy my bridge?" "It appears that way. We'll need copies of all your documentation, but this fits a pattern we've been tracking." After they left, I called Sarah Martinez with an update. Her response was immediate. "Jack, we're filing a federal lawsuit. Civil rights violation, due process violation, conspiracy to deprive you of property rights, and RICO charges for the organized fraud." But Anna Blair wasn't finished with me. 3 days later, I received another certified letter, this time claiming my cattle operation violated HOA noise ordinances and demanding I remove all livestock within 60 days. That's when I decided to take the gloves off. I started by attending the next HOA board meeting on May 20th. The community center was packed with angry residents. Apparently, word about the investigation had leaked. Anna Blair sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 board members who looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Blair," I said during public comment, "I'd like to know why Riverside Meadows, HOA, has been operating without proper nonprofit status for 3 years. The room went dead silent. Anna's face went pale. We filed all necessary paperwork." "Actually, you didn't. I checked with the state registry. You've been collecting fees and issuing fines without legal authority." One of the residents, Mrs. Thompson from Maple Lane, stood up. "Is that true? Because we've paid over $30,000 in assessment fees this year alone." Another voice from the back. "And what about these vendor payments? My husband works in construction. He says Blair Construction charges twice the market rate." Anna Blair tried to maintain control. "These accusations are baseless. Mr. Wyatt is a disgruntled property owner who refuses to comply with community standards." That's when I played my ace. I'd brought a laptop connected to the community center's projector system. With one click, I displayed the security footage of Anna Blair's brother-in-law's crew destroying my bridge. "Community standards," I said, letting the video speak for itself. "Paid for with your assessment fees to a company owned by Mrs. Blair's family." The room erupted. Residents who had been quietly enduring excessive fines and harassment for years suddenly found their voices. Within minutes, 2 board members had resigned on the spot, and someone had called for a vote of no confidence in Anna Blair's leadership. But Anna wasn't going down without a fight. As residents filed out of the meeting, she cornered me near the exit. "You have no idea what you've started, Wyatt. My husband has connections throughout this county. We can make your life very difficult. Mrs. Blair, your husband's connections aren't going to help you when the FBI gets involved." Her eyes widened. FBI? RICO charges tend to attract federal attention, especially when they involve organized fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. The next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Detective Chen. "Mr. Wyatt, we executed search warrants this morning at the Blair residence, Mountain View Development Offices, and the HOA Management Company. We found financial records going back 4 years showing systematic embezzlement of community funds." How much are we talking about? Preliminary estimates suggest over $400,000 in fraudulent payments, inflated contracts, and diverted assessment fees. Mrs. Blair has been using the HOA as her personal piggy bank, while her husband used inside information to target properties for development acquisition. By noon, Anna Blair had been arrested on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. Her husband faced additional charges for bribery and abuse of office. The local news crews were camped outside the county jail by evening. But the best part came the following week when I received a call from County Judge Margaret Foster, Judge Harrison's replacement, after he recused himself from all cases involving Mountain View development. "Mr. Wyatt, I've reviewed your case extensively. The court order authorizing demolition of your bridge was obtained through fraudulent means. The county will pay for complete reconstruction, and you're entitled to damages for the illegal destruction of your property." Sarah Martinez negotiated a settlement that covered not just the bridge reconstruction, but compensation for my cattle relocation costs, legal fees, and punitive damages for the civil rights violations. The total came to $180,000, more than enough to build the strongest bridge Miller's Creek had ever seen. 6 months later, I stood on my new bridge, watching the sunrise paint Miller's Creek the same gold it had always been. But everything else had changed. The Riverside Meadows HOA had been dissolved, its remaining funds distributed back to residents who had been overcharged for years. Anna Blair was serving 18 months in federal prison, and her husband had fled to Florida ahead of his own trial. The story had made national news. Small-town farmer exposes million-dollar HOA scam. And I'd received calls from reporters, documentary filmmakers, and even a few Hollywood types interested in the rights to my story. But the real satisfaction came from the changes in our community. Without the threat of predatory development, property values stabilized. Tom Rodriguez expanded his horse operation. Maria Santos opened a farmer's market that brought city folks out to buy fresh produce every weekend. Old Pete Wilson finally retired, selling his land to his grandson, who planned to continue the family farming tradition. The new bridge became something of a local landmark. County engineer Bill Morrison designed it to handle not just my cattle, but emergency vehicles and farm equipment for all the surrounding properties. Instead of the old wooden structure, we built a proper steel and concrete bridge with LED lighting and decorative stonework that honored the area's agricultural heritage. But the real victory came in February 2023, when Detective Chen called with the final update on the investigation. "Jack, we've traced the full scope of the fraud. Anna Blair and her husband weren't just targeting your property. They had a 5-year plan to force out every farmer in a 12-square-mile area. They'd already purchased options on 6 other properties through intimidation and fraudulent legal actions. What happens to those families now? All fraudulent liens and judgments have been vacated. 2 families who were on the verge of bankruptcy can keep their land. The Henderson place that your neighbor mentioned, they're getting their property back plus damages." The ripple effects continued for months. A state investigation revealed similar schemes in 3 other counties, leading to new legislation requiring enhanced oversight of HOA operations and stricter penalties for abuse of authority. I was invited to testify before the state legislature about the need for property rights protection. During my testimony, I kept thinking about something my grandfather used to say. The land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land. Our job is to protect it for the next generation. Anna Blair saw land as nothing but dollar signs and development opportunities. She forgot that behind every property line were families, histories, and communities that couldn't be replaced by subdivisions and strip malls. The final piece of justice came that spring. Mountain View Development, facing multiple lawsuits and criminal charges, went bankrupt. Their remaining land holdings were sold at auction to a conservation trust that planned to maintain them as permanent agricultural preserve. The irony was perfect. Anna Blair's greed had ensured that the land she coveted would never be developed. As I write this, it's been 2 years since that first certified letter arrived. My farm is more prosperous than ever. My cattle are healthy, and Miller's Creek runs clear and clean beneath the strongest bridge in the county. I've started hosting school groups who come to learn about sustainable farming and property rights, teaching kids that sometimes you have to fight for what's right. The security cameras are still there, still recording everything. But now, they mostly capture deer drinking from the creek, hawks circling over the pastures, and the occasional news crew doing follow-up stories about the HOA bridge case. Anna Blair thought she could use intimidation, fraud, and abuse of power to steal my family's land. She thought a simple farmer wouldn't have the knowledge, resources, or determination to fight back against her sophisticated scheme. She thought wrong on all counts. The truth is, I never wanted to be the guy who takes down corrupt officials or exposes financial fraud. I just wanted to farm my land in peace and maintain the bridge my grandfather built. But sometimes, life forces you to choose between backing down and standing up. Sometimes protecting what you love means fighting for it. Anna Blair learned that lesson the hard way. And thanks to the security footage, financial records, and community support that brought down her empire, other would-be land grabbers know that farmers aren't the easy targets they used to be. They thought they'd broken me. They were wrong. Follow to see what they try next.